how the lamps were lighted, consecration of the Levites, and the age and time of their services. And so we find that God has given specific commands on that. Probably pretty much the first part of it we covered pretty good about the golden lampstands. And just for the sake of it, we're going to read back through verses 1 through 4. Daniel, do you have Numbers verses 1 through 4?
Chapter 8.
Yeah, chapter 8, yeah. Numbers 8, 1 through 4.
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and say to him, What you arrange, or when you arrange the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand. And Aaron did so. He arranged the lamps to face towards the front of the lampstand, as the Lord commanded Moses. Now this workmanship of the lampstand was hammered gold from its shaft to its flowers. It was hammered work, according to the pattern which the Lord had shown Moses. So he made the lampstand.
Right, so, and we talked about that last week, about the lampstand being lighted, and there were some thoughts about the light shining forward, and, you know, kind of was mentioned about some type of reflective property here, whether it was from the skins and how they were developed and designed, or whether there was something to reflect that light forward. And I think we finally wound up saying today that even though our bodies are 360 degrees in nature, what causes our lamps to shine forward today? What would be the backdrop to it all? The Bible, wouldn't it? Okay? So, kind of like the same thought pattern here with this. One of the things we looked at, though, because it got kind of fascinating, was about that lampstand and being made out of 75 pounds of gold. Okay? And I think the Bible refers to that. Let me step over here just a minute. It has a talent. Okay? A talent of gold. And so we looked at the magnificence of God and his splendor at the value of Israel, okay? Just the lampstand alone, taking it for what we know about it. God had instructed Moses to direct Aaron to arrange the lamps of the golden lampstand so they shine forward, illuminating the area in front of it. Aaron does exactly as commanded, highlighting the obedience to divine instruction. So we talked about doing things as we are commanded to do and not deviating from it. One of the things that was fascinating that we talked about is the 75 pounds of that lampstand being of gold. What would that be worth today? Well, with gold trading, when this was put together, it's somewhere around $2,687 an ounce or $43,000 a pound. That lampstand alone was worth $3,225,228 by today's standards. Well, when you look at the overall picture of this, and it brings up another question, what about the tabernacle? And I'm going to get to a spiritual point here in just a second. What about the tabernacle? From what we know of the materials, the metals involved, the wood, the linens, and all this kind of stuff, value on it has been placed in today's dollars of somewhere around $200 million. Okay? So, I think it was Daniel said, they brought a lot of gold out of Egypt, didn't they? Well, they sure did. Matter of fact, they had plundered Egypt, hadn't they? Historically, when you look at the writings and works of history, along about this period of time, even mankind has documented a great economic and military collapse of Egypt in this time frame, okay? So that only verifies, really, what your Bible don't need it, what the Bible's saying anyway, right? So, anyway, when you look at that, Israel was physically wealthy, wasn't it? Physically, I see. God placed a lot of value on Israel, didn't he? Well, what about Israel today spiritually? Does God place a lot of value on us today? Actually, probably more so if you look at some of the statements that Jesus made about, you know, if a man loses his soul and gains the whole world, what does it profit him? So how much value does God put on us today? A lot, abundantly, doesn't He? He sure does. And you know, here physically with Israel of old, He placed a lot of value on them, didn't He? He sure did. And so, you know, when you look at this and you stop and think about that lampstand, suppose in the annals of time, somewhere or another, somebody's digging over and all that sand and they actually found the authentic lampstand. Now it becomes a historical artifact, doesn't it? The $3 million wouldn't touch the value of it, would it? Who knows what it would be worth? What if they found, and they're not, because when you look at this kind of close, it seems like has the Assyrians and the Chaldeans and all those people begin to plunder Israel as they send out. It looks like this stuff was carried away, was probably melted back down into something else, okay? That's what it looks like. And you know, I know this is kind of off the Bible subject, but if you stop and think about it, when you get over in the Iranian part of the world, the Iraqi part of the world, traditionally in history, they've been very rich countries, okay? A lot of gold, a lot of silver, okay? A lot of fine linen. So I reckon where a lot of this may have come from. Yeah, okay? And just think about the original temple, a lot of that was gold plated. And it was a fine stone, emeralds, jewels, okay? Who plundered it? Okay? So, you know, that's just thoughts on history. It kind of boggles the mind when you stop and think about it, okay? But the spiritual value is what God is interested today and not the monetary value. So our spiritual value is worth a lot to God, isn't it? Here we're going to have the cleansing and dedication of the Levites. This is going to be a ordination, if you will, to formally separate the Levitical priesthood from the people. You're going to see a big divide here between this. And so what we're going to do is we'll begin reading at Numbers chapter 5. And Jeff, if you'll read through verse 10, maybe somewhere along, and then I'll stop you.
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the Levites from among the people of Israel and cleanse them. Thus you shall do to them and cleanse them. Sprinkle the water of purification upon them, and let them go with a razor over all their body, and wash their clothes and cleanse themselves. And let them take a bull from the herd of its grain offering, and fine flour mixed with oil, and you shall take another bull from the herd for a sin offering. And you shall bring the Levites before the tent of meeting, and assemble the whole congregation of the people of Israel. And when you bring the Levites before the Lord, the people of Israel shall lay their hands on the Levites.
Okay, so here we find the Levites being ordained, if you will. There's another term I would like to use, but it won't come to me, okay, that they actually use. But we'll call it that. The Lord told Moses to start separating them, right? And what he did was, there were things in particular that they done physically to be cleansed. Cleansed with water, clean shaven. Also, they were to bring a meat offering, mingled with flour for the sin offering. And notice something else that happened here. Then they were presented before the congregation of Israel for Israel to do what? Lay their hands on them. Now, when you look at this and you stop and think about the magnitude of it, did each and every person in the camp lay their hands on them? Probably not. Probably a representation here. But also the laying on of hands is another way of saying we approve. They were brought before the congregation of Israel to be approved. Do we know even in the New Bible, a lot of times when somebody was ordained or whatever, there was physically laying on of hands and they were prayed for and things of that nature? Well, yeah, they did. They did. And so we find something very similar here. And all that is signifying what? A sense of approval. Now, I'll go back and say maybe on this right here, maybe 3 million people walked by there and laid their hands on them. I don't know, Jeff. I wasn't there, okay? And when you stop and think about it in pattern and plan and organization, probably some type of approval process on this. Maybe it was just the leaders or the princes of the 12 tribes or whatever involved in all this, okay? But anyways, they were going to be approved of the people, and notice the transfer of sin taking place. Now we find it being transferred to the Levitical priesthood, who worked as the intercessors between the people now and God. We know Moses was the main intercessor, wasn't he? Okay? But now here we find a similar situation. Today, how are our sins transferred from us to God? Through who? Jesus Christ. Okay? So are we seeing somewhat of a similar pattern maybe when you look at this? And some of this, when you go back and look at it on historical accounts and all, sometimes it's kind of hard to get in mind exactly how this application was made. Jeff, did they march 3 million people across there over the course of time, and they touch all these priests, over 8,000 of them and all? I don't know, I wasn't there. Go ahead.
I would think that because he has separated, when he did the census, the fighting men, they would be representation of each tribe.
Well, and that could be.
It could be something like that.
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But the main point of it is they're acknowledging and approving the priesthood. We're accepting. It's kind of like maybe what we do today in the church with elders, right? Or maybe even with deacons. But overall, if it's carried out in a decent and proper manner, kind of the congregation's approval, isn't it? If they accept it. And we went through the process here where we allowed the congregation 2 weeks to have input, didn't we? So things can be established, and anything that's outstanding, it can be reconciled, right? So, really kind of the same process. And then when the announcement was made and the prayer was made over the elders, that's the signification of approval, isn't it? So when you look at it, it's kind of in the same manner. Like I say, I don't have an overhead or a movie showing Eric, how that was done, because I'm sure they didn't have Warner Brothers sitting on the mountainside somewhere with a cowboy, right? So anyway, that's the thought on that. They're set apart now as a formal priesthood. Ryan, would you read verses 11 through 20?
And Aaron shall offer the Levites before the Lord as a wave offering from the people of Israel, that they may do service of the Lord. Then the Levites shall lay their hands on the heads of the bulls, and you shall offer the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering to the Lord. I just lost it there.
Oh, okay.
Thus you shall separate the Levites from among the people of Israel, and the Levites shall be mine. And after that the Levites shall go in to serve at the tent of meeting, when you have cleansed them and offered them as a wave offering. For they are wholly given to me from among the people of Israel. Instead of all who open the womb, the firstborn of all the people of Israel, I have taken them for myself. For all the firstborn among the people of Israel are mine, both of man and of beast. And on the day that I struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I consecrated them for myself. And I have taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn among the people of Israel, and I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and his sons from among the people of Israel, to do the service for the people of Israel at the tent of meeting, and to make atonement for the people of Israel, that there may be no plague among the people of Israel, when the people of Israel come near the sanctuary. Thus did Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the people of Israel to the Levites, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses concerning the Levites, the people of Israel did to them.
Okay, so here we are. Here again, part of the ceremonial aspect of separating the Levites. One of the things you notice in verse 15, what were the Levites separated to do? Well, it says here to do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. So here we are. There's a lot of things that was involved in the service of the tabernacle, wasn't it? There was a lot of sacrificing, fires to be lit, incense to be done, a whole gamut of things that was going to be relied upon the tribe of Levi to do. Also, we noticed something else that they done. They acted as a buffer between the people and the tabernacle, didn't they? You know, it says here that in verse 19 that I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron to his sons among the children of Israel to make an atonement for the children of Israel, that there be no plagues amongst the children of Israel. So these people also acted as an atonement, didn't they, as a sacrifice. Do we collectively, as the spiritual Israel today, have an atonement that was taking place between us and God? Yeah, that was Jesus Christ, wasn't it? Okay? So you could say in a sense, if you will, if you want to stop and think about it, that really we have Christ acting as a buffer between us and God, don't we? Yeah. You know? We didn't have that buffer, and God being our petitioner, Jesus being our petitioner, where would we be left? Did not Moses act as a buffer between the children of Israel and God? Because what he wanted to do? He wanted to destroy them, didn't he? You know? So we need to be very thankful that we do have a service like that set up between us and them. And I'm going to read verses 21 and 22. And the Levites, they were purified, and they washed their clothes, and Aaron offered them as an offering before the Lord, and made atonement for them to cleanse them. And after that went the Levites to the service in the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and before his sons as Moses had commanded. Moses concerning the Levites did so unto them. And so we have the purification of them taking place. The Levites were purified before the Lord. Any of you gentlemen want to comment on how we're purified before the Lord today? Through what? The water of the grave of baptism, aren't we? So you kind of see has become, and thereby we become a priest. You know, actually all of us are priests before God today, aren't we? We're actually the 8,000, aren't we? Okay? We act as a buffer between God and what? The world, don't we? Okay? We're actually calling in the world to serve God, but we're the buffer line, aren't we? And people come into Christ. We don't just accept any mythology, any thought, any plan, or any program, because one of the overheads we just saw, what did it say in that overhead? They did as God did what? As God commanded. Okay? Not as I commanded, but as God commanded. So. The Levite, how about that now? The Levites are subjected to purification rites involving a ritual shaving, a symbolic washing of their clothes, and the application of a sin offering. The Israelites laid their hands on the Levites, symbolically transferring their sins. A bull is offered as a sin and burnt offering to make atonements for the Levites. They are then presented before the Lord as a wave offering from the Israelites and dedicated to perform the duties in the temple. How do we today get to perform the duties in the spiritual temple, if you will? Through the purification process, don't we? Okay? So the pattern and thought really is the same, isn't it? One physical, one spiritual. And I put this up here about retirement, okay? And I put that up there because of verses 23 through 26, okay? And we'll read those verses and you'll see what this is about, okay? Morgan, do you have Numbers chapter 8, verses 23 through 26?
Yeah. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "This is what pertains to the Levites from 25 years old and above, when they enter to perform service in the work of the tabernacle of meeting. And at the age of 50 years, they must cease performing this work and shall work no more. They may minister with their brethren in the tabernacle of meeting to attend to needs, but they themselves shall do no work. Thus you shall do to the Levites regarding their duties."
So, you know, what we have here is now the Levites are given a specific age of when they're to begin their duties and end their duties, beginning at 25 through the age of 50. Basically, when we look at those numbers and we look at all the work, and pretty much it was laborious, wasn't it? A lot of labor involved in it. Pretty much a man generally is considered in his prime between somewhere in those numbers, right? 25 to 50. Sometimes we say 20 to 50, 55, okay? But somewhere in there lies a man's ability in his prime to perform those functions. But as he gets older, the wear and tear on the body means you can't do like you did, right? You hear me joke a lot of times, but it's true. I can't do like I did when I was 60. And that's true, okay? It's just normal aging process, isn't it? So God established them in their prime, but when they reached 50 years of age, then they would no longer be in that service. And I put that word retirement up there because sometimes people think, okay, they done retired. But if you notice, they never really retired from the service of the Lord, did they? Notice verse 26. God said, they shall minister with their brethren in the tabernacle to keep the charge and shall do no service. So what were they acting as? Like consultants, maybe? Seeing to it if those men, things come up right, and you had these men that's done been through it, and maybe a 30-year-old is running into something, and you had these aged, wise men, they could go do what? They could consult with them, couldn't they? Okay? So, maybe God did set up a type of retirement, but not as we know it. It's just no longer being able to do the service, the formal service of the tabernacle. God specifies the ages of service for the Levites. They are to start serving at the age of 25 and retire at the age of 50. However, they may assist their brothers in performing their duties after retirement, but they themselves are not to work in the tent of meeting. So, they could assist. A lot of times assisting is what? Sitting back saying, hey, can do it that way or this way or whatever, And we see that in life today. A lot of times when younger people are in apprenticeship in different vocations, what are the older ones more or less doing? Advising them how to do it, aren't they? Telling them what tools they need, where to go get them, how to sharpen them, things of that nature. So, anyway, that's what we're looking at here in the service of the Levites. Numbers 8 is a chapter of precision, obedience, and dedication. It portrays God's specific instruction to Moses about the arrangement of the lampstand in the tabernacle and the purification of the Levites, their dedication to the service of the Lord, and determining the period of their service. This chapter underlines the importance of following God's instructions diligently, consecration to service, and the role of Levites in maintaining the sacredness of the religious rites and rituals. Does that apply today? If you break it out spiritually? Yeah. Same thing, isn't it? What are we duty bound to do? Obey God's commandments and carry out the worship as He has described it in the New Testament, right? We're to carry those things out each and every first day of the week, just like prescribed. And that was their duty and responsibility under the old also, and the physical. I'm going to have to go in and change over to the next series of slides in chapter 9, 10, and 11. So I'll be right back. Eric, I still don't have a deal walking out.
It's okay, there's one in the back.
Oh, okay. Where did I lay my clip? Okay, we're going to be moving over into Numbers chapter 9, okay? Numbers chapter 9. What we're getting into is the Israelites are prepared to leave Sinai and going to be headed to the wilderness of Paran, specifically Kadesh Barnea, okay? So this is where all this is leading up to in this major move that they're going to make. Now, they're not going to go there in a day's time, okay? It's going to take a while, and we'll get more into that as this unfolds. But here we find in chapter 9, they're going to partake of a Passover. Now, a second Passover is allowed, and the cloud following them, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Now, Leviticus chapter 9, as I said, a mandate, okay? So this is a mandate. This is specific instructions required by God that's going to take place here. What we're going to see is adherence to divine mandates, celebrating Passover, and following the guidance of the Lord's cloud. So here we're going to get into what we'll usually see and talk about in their travels, the events that's going to take place, the hardships, the grumbling, the growling, and why they're not going to get to go right on into the promised land, but wander in the wilderness for about a total of 40 years. 38 years wandering, 2 years so far, a year coming out of Egypt, about a year for all some of this going on. So anyway. Numbers 9 reassures us that obedience to God's commands, even in adversity, leads to blessings and guidance. The Israelites commit to celebrate the Passover despite the wilderness environment. Underscores the importance of faith and compliance. Simultaneously, God's cloud and fire reaffirms His continuous guidance and the value of His divine presence in navigating life's wilderness. And how about that? Going to celebrate the Passover despite the wilderness environment. How would that apply today, you think, some of you brothers? How do you think that would apply today?
Traveling, whenever you're traveling.
Right. Oh, what
In
about,
the past, we've all gone down to Florida for the holidays.
Sure.
And then traveling Sundays, we've stopped and held our own services on the side of the road if need be.
Yeah.
We've done that going to my family in Pennsylvania too.
sure, sure. The point is remembering the first day of the week, isn't it? Okay, that's the whole point. Peggy and I have done the same thing, okay? When we're traveling, we make preparations to meet or whatever, you know, and things of that nature. So that's what it's talking about here. What about being in the wilderness? Could we even elaborate on that a little bit more? What about the political climate? You know, I think we have to stop and think about that, don't we? What about the political climate in keeping the Passover, you know? We just went through a period of time in this country to where, you know, pretty much we had this disease going on. Even though the church might not have met here, we met in little groups, didn't we, within our families and things. So did we remember it? Yeah. So, you know, a lot of times the whole point is your attitude about the whole thing, isn't it? Okay? The attitude about, what attitude do you have? You know, Brother Kahn, I've learned a lot from him. One of the things that he used to say is a lot of times when decisions are made in the church, and maybe it doesn't work out exactly like men thinks it would, he said, I don't see where we've sinned because we were acting on what? Faith. On faith. Okay? So we do things by faith, don't we? And as human beings, maybe it's not the perfect situation, but what we do is we're doing it by faith. Maybe we make a decision that the church doesn't meet, maybe on a Wednesday night or Sunday morning because of weather conditions or the dangers of it or whatever. Are we doing that arbitrarily? We're trying to do what's best for the congregation and people at large because you are bound to that. So you're doing it by faith, aren't you? Okay, you're doing it by faith. Just because a decision is made as individual priests, should that stop us from having an opportunity to stop and make preparation to take a Lord's Supper? No. It's all about your attitude a lot of times with the whole thing, isn't it? So anyway, you can be out in the wilderness. I would imagine a lot of times when the Passover was given, the enemies of Israel was around about them. So probably what was some of the men of war doing? you know? But somewhere in all that, they kept the Passover too, whether they broke it out by units or whatever. It's just something to think about, okay? That, well, a lot of times we don't think about these things, you know? We just run out on a limb and, ah! Well, every time I run out on a limb, Daniel, me and the limb hit the ground. Because you get cut off behind, okay? So just something to think about with all this, okay? What about the conversation here? The Passover is going to be enjoyed. A second Passover is going to be allowed. The cloud guides the Israelites, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at here in chapter 9. The Passover revisited, verses 1 through 5. Eric, I think we're up to you.
Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, let the children of Israel keep the Passover at the appointed time. On the 14th day of the month, at twilight, you shall keep it at its appointed time. According to all its rites and ceremonies, you shall keep it. So Moses told the children of Israel, that they should keep the Passover. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel did.
Okay, so here we have, the Passover being re-enjoyed, okay? And this is something that was going to be done as they traveled in the wilderness, as we just talked about. And so we find the children of Israel did what? As the Lord commanded, right? In the first year after the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, God commanded Moses to ensure the people observe the Passover on the prescribed day. Despite being in the wilderness of Sinai, the Israelites observed Passover meticulously, just as God had commanded. So, in that hardship, what did they do? What God commanded, didn't they? They observed the Passover. Addressing ritual impurities, verses 6 through 14. Daniel, I think we're back up here with you.
Now there were certain men who were defiled by human corpse, so they could not keep the Passover on that day, and they came before Moses and Aaron that day. And those men said to him, we became defiled by a human corpse. Why are we kept from presenting the offering of the Lord at its appointed time among the children of Israel? And Moses said to them, stand still, that I may hear what the Lord will command concerning you. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, if any one of you or your posterity is unclean because of a corpse, or is far away on a journey, he may still keep the Lord's Passover. On the 14th day of the second month at twilight, they may keep it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall leave none of it until morning, nor break one of its bones. According to all the ordinances of the Passover, they shall keep it. But the man who is clean and is not on a journey, and ceases to keep the Passover, that same person shall be cut off from among his people, because he did not bring the offering of the Lord at its appointed time. That man shall bear his sins. And if a stranger dwells among you, and would keep the Lord's Passover, he must do so according to the rite of the Passover, and according to its ceremony. You shall have one ordinance both for the stranger and the native of the land.
Okay, so what do we see here? The keeping of the Passover, right? But one of the things that we notice here is that if someone's unclean on a far journey, what did the Lord allow them to do that evening? The Lord allowed them to take another Passover, didn't he? But if you were able to be at that main feast of Passover on this day and did not keep it, what have you done? Neglected your duty, hadn't you? Neglected your duty. And that's the whole point that he's getting at here. It's a neglecting of duty. What about strangers amongst us that come in? You know, I've been around, not like a lot of you, but been around in a place or two where it seems like there's always a brother. He's a Lord's Supper police officer, okay? Short of calling names, he would get up there and talk about what's going on, and he knew about certain events in people's lives, and he didn't want them to take of the Lord's Supper. Well, I'm not the Lord's Supper police. That's on you. You know whether or not you sent him before God or not. And you kind of get the same picture here. As long as a stranger among you wants to keep the Passover, what did he allow them to do? To keep it, didn't he? You know, go ahead, Eric.
It says, so let a man examine himself.
There you go. Okay? There you go. Because, see, one of the things, you know, and I don't want to go off on no tangent. One of the things you got to remember as human beings, there's only so much we can do, isn't there? There's only so much knowledge we have when we look at circumstances and situations. I think very often we leave out in our thought pattern Matthew 13. What did Jesus tell the disciples? He says, you know, the tares are going to come up in the kingdom. The bad seed's going to come up with the good seed a lot of times, isn't it? And you may not be able to discern it exactly, right? Who did he tell them was going to be the holy reapers? The angels. So who in the end is going to pull the tares or the unusefulness out of the church? The holy angels. What did he say that the holy angels are going to do with them? Burn them in fire. Kind of interesting isn't it, when you look at it. And I'm not saying that you just overlook. No. As men, you can only control so much, you know. Ryan, go ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
Huh?
Go ahead and finish your thought.
Oh, no, I was going to ring the buzzer.
I think Daniel read as they were to follow according to the custom.
Uh-huh.
My version says the sojourner should according to its rule. So if they wanted to follow the Passover and observe the Passover, they had to do it. They had to follow it exactly. They couldn't deviate.
Exactly.
You know, okay, I like the lamb, but you know, I kind of want to have a sacrifice bread with it. They can't do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
They had to follow exactly the way that the Israelites did it. That's why it says the
Yeah,
one
right.
statute for both the sojourner and the native. So
Right.
They couldn't do whatever they wanted as part of it. They had to follow the exact thing.
Exactly. And you know, we do have people, and you've been in congregations, we've had people here that come, and they would come on a regular basis a lot of times, but they never were formal members of the church, were they? Did we allow them? Maybe they decided, well, you know, I don't like that unleavened bread you guys are using. Why don't you use some French toast with syrup? Tastes better. Well, now what happens, Ryan? Being a deviate, don't you? You're beginning to allow the stranger and the world dictate how the church functions. Okay? And you can't do that. Yeah, they had to abide by the same rules and regulations that they did, you know, where it was applicable. Okay? And that would be the strangers among them doing that. So anyway, very good thoughts on. Very good thoughts. Well, it's just a few minutes till. I just rung the buzzer once. We'll see. A group of men who had become ritually impure by touching a dead body and were thus unable to celebrate the Passover approached Moses and Aaron for guidance. Upon their request, God provided a special provision, a second Passover for those who had missed the initial celebration due to ritual impurity or travel. This rule applied not only to the Israelites, but also to the foreigners living among them. So I think Ryan did a good job on bringing that out, okay? So they were not separated just because they were from a different culture, a different influence, a different segment of society. All those things that influence men. You know, what if someone comes in and say, they hear the singing, they say, you know, I got a few guys that we play in the band. Why don't we put the instrumental music in there next week? What have we just done? Violated it. They're strangers among us. So if we allow that to happen, now what are we doing? We're conforming to who? The stranger of the world, aren't we? Okay? Anyway, so. I think I'm going to stop right here. God's guidance to the cloud and the fire. Verses 15 through 23. I think I'll stop right there and ring this buzzer again, and we'll pick up there next week. So we're going to start to get into them actually moving, okay, from Sinai. So.